Got Mandy Brasser here from Streamline for Success, and Mandy's going to show us all the cool things she's doing with events, webinars, and really powerful stuff.
Thank you, Matt, for the opportunity. And when you reached out a little while ago, I was very humbled and grateful for the opportunity. So, yeah, I'm really excited. Obviously, we're talking today about event setup secrets to save hours and generate more results. I have a tendency to talk a little fast sometimes, so hopefully you can keep up. And I'm going to share a lot of kind of tips and little tricks that we're doing as we go. So, yeah, just make sure you've got some pen and paper ready to go and you can write notes as we go through. So what we're going to cover today, I'm going to talk a little bit about my story, why I think it's important to run events if you're not considering, or if you're not doing it at the moment, why you should consider running events. I'm going to share what we're doing and what we have been running, some tools that we use. I'm also going to share an example of a live event that we've set up and worked with a particular speaker over the last few years and what we're doing there. And a recurring webinar, so if you're running like weekly, like a business booster type format to your clients, or I think you guys call it bi-weekly or fortnightly or monthly, those sorts of things. So we're going to talk about recurring webinars and how we've sort of got that set up. Some event stats that I think are really important that everyone sort of starts to track. So if you do want to get access to the slides, I will be sharing them after, so you don't feel like you need to take screenshots. So I've got some more kind of detailed sort of slides that you might be interested in later on. So don't worry about any of that. You'll be able to have access to those slides. And also, if you're working with anyone that's doing events, or you want to partner and work together on helping get more events out there and automated to your clients, I've also got an opportunity if you want to have a chat after this as well, so we can talk about that further. So who am I? I know some of you do know who I am, but some of you don't. So as Matt said, my name is Mandy Brasser, and I live in Australia at a really cool place called Coolangatta in Queensland, which you can see there on the east coast. It's about an hour just south of Brisbane. And I've been living there for the last couple of years, and you can see I love volleyball. That's the Coolangatta beach, and it's just magical. If anyone heads over that way, let me know. We'd love to show you around. It's just a beautiful place in the world. And I'm very fortunate to live there because with Infusionsoft, it's all online, as we all know, so I can choose where I live, and why not live there? So it's a pretty cool place. So I have got a background in HR, so human resources. So for about 10 years, I worked my way up to hold a senior global position in a pretty large corporation. And for any of you that have been in the corporate world know it's an interesting place sometimes to be in. And I loved what I did. I used to do business process design, systems, and reporting. I loved it, but I didn't necessarily love who I worked for. So when I had the opportunity to sort of get exposed to Infusionsoft back in 2012, and then Infusionsoft were expanding out to Australia. They ran their first certified partner training back in 2014. I thought, well, this is a really great opportunity. It can use a lot of the skills that I've already got and been experienced in the corporate world, and then I can go and work with business owners who can make decisions, and we can get stuff done and get results quite quickly. I am a service-based partner, and we have primarily been working with coaches, consultants, and speakers, but more in a one-on-one custom implementation side of things. So events have been really helpful for us to start branching out from that one-on-one type of work. So why run events? Now, if you're like me, you might be a little frustrated. I know there's a few service partners here on the webinar about that are doing a lot of hours, doing that one-on-one, selling time for money, which I fully get. And maybe you've reached capacity and like you can't take on anymore. It's just like you've got so much going on and you can't bring on any more clients. Or maybe you don't have enough sales. Maybe you actually need to bring in some more business. And in terms of events, maybe you're thinking, well, it shouldn't be this hard to be able to put together an event and capitalize on that. So what should events really be about? And I think it's really about being able to use them as a way to get new leads to your business, increase customer loyalty. I think we can all appreciate that avid fan that's just a raving fan. They love what you do, and being able to provide events and add more value to either your customers or existing list can absolutely increase your loyalty, and we're seeing that with what we're doing. And bring in more sales, and I'm going to share some of what the results that we've been getting, but definitely can bring in more sales. But above all, for me, it's about making a bigger impact, and that should stay in the world. Just imagine the world at the end, but you can see it there. But, you know, I know a lot of you are up to so much in your life, and you want to play a bigger game. And events really allow you to leverage your message and your time to get that message out there to more people. So I think there's a lot of value in doing events. So who this webinar is really for today, and hopefully you can see from the last few slides that I've shared, so it's really for people considering running events. So if you're not running any right now, I really encourage you to just take that on just for this webinar and consider what's possible. And as I said, I'll share some of our results. I'm not a professional speaker, like I'll put my hand up and say that from the get-go. So we're kind of just sort of starting out with events, and I'm going to share what we're up to. But if you're not, really do consider it, because it's really starting to transform what we're up to, and we know that we're getting results from it, and I'm sure you can as well. You might already be running events, so we'll be sharing a bunch of examples about what we're doing, some hacks, and how you can save time and get more results. Or if you're working with prospects or clients who run events, and you want to get an idea about what tools are out there, what the differences are between some of them, and what functionality that you think your clients might be interested in. So the events that we run. So at the moment we're sort of focusing on three main events. So we run some free webinars, we run our monthly client webinars, as well as live in-person workshops. And we've been doing that over the last few years, workshops in the last sort of year, I would say. Now, I want to share about the results of one of the particular webinars that I did, and as I said, it's not crazy rocket science, but I think that the point here is it's really great to get started. So one of the webinars that we ran earlier this year, and for those who run events all the time and run webinars, these probably aren't the best stats, and I'm okay with that. So we had 28 registrations, we had 10 people attend the webinar, we had 3 calls booked, and we actually, the offer on the webinar was for a free call. And then we had 6 sales, which came about from not just those people that booked the call, but from other people that signed up for the webinar, which was fantastic. And we generated over 8K of revenue, and plus, I mean, we've got one of those came on as a retainer client, and they're still working with us now, so it's going to generate more revenue. But I know this wasn't perfect. It wasn't the best setup. It probably wasn't all the greatest results that we could possibly get. Like, we definitely wanted more people there. We definitely probably wanted more registrations, all those sorts of things. But my point here is you just got to start somewhere. And, you know, am I happy with having an extra 8K in my bank account? Absolutely, right? So, yeah, I really think hopefully that gives you a bit of a sense of what's possible. Now, the next one I want to kind of share, we ran our first live workshop last year. Now, I was pretty nervous about it. I'm fine doing webinars. It's kind of a little strange actually being here because Matt's sitting in the same room, and normally I have no one to look at and I can kind of go off on my little tangent and talk away. So for me, getting up in front of a room is very nerve-wracking. And I decided last year, after I received a number of emails from current clients, or I've been speaking with people, that, hey, you know, are you running any trainings? We want to train our team, that sort of thing. And I said, oh, no, I've been kind of avoiding it for some time. I thought, well, it's actually probably about time we started doing it. And the big thing here I wanted to really stress was we really didn't set up anything. And I think, well, maybe I'm more guilty of it than anybody, but a lot of the times we know the tools, we know what's possible, and we get excited and we set up these really amazing campaigns. But really, if no one signs up, then we've just spent all this time setting up something that no one's going to see the light of day. So I really made a conscious effort here to look at what's the leanest way we can actually set up this event. And it was firstly just sending an email to those who had expressed interest and going, well, hey, we're looking at putting this workshop together. Can you let me know by this date? And let me know if you're interested. And that was it. It started with just a basic email. And got some responses, then set a date. Didn't even have a location yet. I figured we'll get the general area, and then people could sign up, and we went from there. So there was a whole process that we went through, and at the end, in addition to the slides, if you want the steps that we followed in terms of in confirming that interest and what we built out at what time, I'm more than happy to share that as well. But the big thing here was making sure that, well, I was getting paid to create the content. I wasn't going to spend hours, maybe days, working out what this awesome workshop was going to be, because if no one bought it, there's no point. So it was really getting a high-level outline of, okay, what do I want to cover in this session, and going from there. The other point I wanted to make here is how can I ease my nerves? Now, this might not be the case for all of you, but speaking in front of a room, it's quite nerve-wracking for me. So I wanted to consider what can I actually do to make this first one successful. And a couple of things that I did was I picked a location that I could sleep in my own bed. Now, that sounds really probably strange, but I didn't want to go to a hotel and be out of my own routine, so that was important. Knowing the venue, and the really important component here was being really selective with who I invited. So I actually went out to my best clients, the people that love me, they're my raving fans, and I know that they would get value out of it, but they would also be constructive with their feedback and just be really awesome people to have in the room for a day. So I encourage you, if you are considering your first workshop, what can you do to help ease your nerves over? Just a couple of the things that I did. Now, in terms of tools for this, I forgot to mention on the webinar before, the tools that we use for our free webinar is My Fusion Helper and GoToWebinar. Why it's pretty straightforward to set up My Fusion Helper. I know there's Plus This and a few others available, and GoToWebinar, it just seems to be, we found it the most reliable. People kind of know it and know how to navigate around. And in terms of our first live event, we used Dynamic Sync, and this is because we know it, and the intention was that we would set up some future dates and rerun that same event. So in speaking of tools, I've mentioned My Fusion Helper, Plus This, Dynamic Sync. There's a whole bunch of event tools available, and you can go to the marketplace, search events, and you can find a bunch of them there. I can only really comment on these three because I've used them. So it's not to say that the others aren't great. I'm just not in a place to comment on these. These have really helped us. So yeah, we mainly use My Fusion Helper now for free webinars, and I know the same functionality is available in Plus This, so if you've got that, use that. And Dynamic Sync we mainly use for reoccurring events like webinars, live workshops that we know we're going to run again and again, and those sorts of things. Now, I wanted to kind of expand on that and talk about two specific event examples. And really, I want to share from the place of demonstrating some really cool functionality that we're using to make it a lot easier to save a whole bunch of time in terms of the setup and like the ongoing setup, and just make it just a lot easier to manage the event. So pretty much all of these features are in Dynamic Sync. So that's obviously a tool that you can definitely check out, but you can kind of get a sense of what's possible anyway in your business. So we're going to have a look at some before and after states. So we're going to talk about a live event that we've been working on with a client for a number of years. And then I'm actually going to share what we do in terms of our reoccurring webinars as well. So the first one, the live event example. We've been working with this client for a number of years, and they hold a intro kind of preview event, and sometimes it's free, sometimes it's low cost, and we've been testing and working out what's sort of working better, and that's been happening over the last couple of years. But really, this is their main event to sell their ongoing sort of program membership that they offer. So it's a really, really critical event in terms of their marketing activities. So it's really, really important that we have this set up in the best possible way. So originally when we first started doing these events, it was 7 locations across Australia. So we needed to make sure that all the registrants got the confirmation emails with all the relevant details about that event, but also making sure that the registration process was easy as well. So before we actually, the initial setup, I should say, so the before sort of state before we introduced and implemented Dynamic Sync, it was very manual. Even after I'd set up the original campaign structure and we ran, say, 7 events, and then we go to market again and we do another 7 events, to update that entire campaign took a lot of time. It was really one day to update, and you might be thinking, well, that seems a bit too much. Well, even using campaign merge fields, we had this as streamlined as possible as what we could deliver in Infusionsoft, but they had some additional requirements that required some follow-up specifically for people who were registering by themselves or registering with their partner, so they wanted to communicate with them a little differently. But either way, it really meant that each of those 7 locations, we needed to create a registered tag for all of those. The 7 registered tags, we needed to create 7 attended tags and 7 not attended and those sorts of things. So it got quite cumbersome to be able to put this together. And the manual update, like updating the registration page where there was visibility of what events are available and those sorts of things, was also a manual part of that process. So each time around, a day to update the entire campaign. And as you can see, there's a time to launch, that was coming back to me. So it was dependent on my availability, when could I spend the day doing it, and the increased chance of error was absolutely there, because anything you do, as we all know, anything you do manually, there's a higher chance of error there. And then we also had the downside of the registration process at the actual event. We were just sort of printing that off from a saved contact search and putting that in Excel and kind of doing the manual process there. So it was a bit of a longer process to check people in. So the after state, so what did we do? So we implemented Dynamic Sync and Infusionsoft, and after we got that original kind of campaign set up and optimized for them, and it's really then, now every time they run a new event, it's less than 10 minutes each time to load up those new dates. There's no changes that you need to make in the campaign. It's really just going into Dynamic Sync, which you can see on the top right there, completing the date, completing the time that it starts and ends, what time zone it's in, and creating. And what this actually does is it flows through to their WordPress plugin that's on the client's website and updates so that people can register for that next event. So you can see there from the kind of screenshot of the campaign, really that confirmation or reminder sequence can be done in one sequence. We've kind of got a few things happening. As I mentioned, we're kind of splitting it out and communicating with people who are registering on their own versus people who are registering with a partner. So we kind of do a couple of things differently, and then we've got something else happening there. But really, this could come down to one sequence as opposed to 7 sequences. And as I mentioned, it doesn't require any updating of the actual campaign itself, which is fantastic. So now it gives the power back to the client, because they can go in there, they're not relying on me to be available when I can go and update those dates. They can just go in there and change it. Like I had a client yesterday saying, oh, we're actually going to cancel this event. They can just cancel it and they don't need to go through and update any landing pages that refer to that date, any parts of the campaign that's also related to that date. So it's really helpful and saves a bunch of time. So faster launches is there. Reusable setup, we can reuse it every time we add new dates. Smoother check-in process as well. As you can kind of see there, I took a screenshot of our event that we ran last year, but you've got the ability to QR codes, which I know Plusis does as well. But with Dynamic Sync, this is all part of their setup. So when someone comes to register for the event, not only could you scan that QR code, but you can also see on the bottom there in that image, there's a list of all the registrants, and you can just click a button to say that they're there. And as you can imagine, if you're running events or for your clients, normally when you have a check-in process, you've got everyone coming in a very short period of time. So this really does allow you to reduce the stress, and not just for the team, but for the attendees, so they can have a smoother experience, so they can actually get into the room, feel relaxed, know they're in the right place, and it's not an awful experience. Now, the other really awesome thing that I want to mention is about the automatic tag creation, and this for me and for our clients, I feel is a huge game changer if you're running a lot of events. And I'm going to share a bit more detail on that. So for anyone that runs events and want to really track the effectiveness of those events, it's helpful to understand what the event is, did they register, and what the date of that particular event is. Now, a really cool thing that Dynamic Sync has created is this HTTP post that actually automatically creates that tag. So, for example, we've got 7 events. Let's say we're running an event in Brisbane. I go in there. I'm the first person that's registered for Brisbane. I head into the campaign, and this HTTP post fires, and it's automatically going to create free event, registered the 3rd of March 2017. And if you wanted to put the location in there, you can. Obviously, you can fully customize that. So that's going to happen automatically. And then if Matt comes in, registers, you're going to come out, hang out in Brisbane, you go through the registration process, you hit this, the tag automatically gets applied to you. It doesn't get recreated, it's already there, but it automatically happens to anyone that kind of meets that same criteria. And why I think this is incredibly powerful, this goes back to the point of I don't need to update anything in the campaign to get the visibility of, registered, no-show, cancelled, all of that in terms of that particular event. So I hope I'm explaining that right, that for us it's huge that we can get that level of reporting and use those tags for reporting, which I'll show you what we're doing about that later on as well. So that's the live event example. The reoccurring webinar one is something that we're personally doing, as I mentioned before. And maybe you're like me and you get clients who send you those questions, those really generic Infusionsoft questions, and you just want to say, go to Infusionsoft help and find your answer. Or maybe that's just me. But sometimes there's some common questions from clients, and we saw that as an opportunity. Well, how about we add more value to our clients and run some reoccurring webinars about some more generic stuff about Infusionsoft, but about marketing, and what's actually going to really help them grow their business. So we saw it as an opportunity to help more people in a more leveraged way and adding more value and creating that loyalty with our customer base. So we saw it as an opportunity to create some monthly live 60-minute Q&A webinars, and it's worked really well for us. So beforehand, before this all went down with our current setup, is we didn't do it. And you might be thinking, well, it's not that hard, Mandy, come on, you should have just done it. Well, this was back sort of 2 years ago. And yes, there were back then some integrations between Infusionsoft and GoToWebinar. But I didn't see that it was tight enough, because I want to think that I'm conscious of being efficient, but sometimes I'm lazy, let's be honest about it. So I wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to be cumbersome for us to actually get this off the ground and maintain it. And before, really, if we were to do that, we would need to go into GoToWebinar. We'd have to use another tool to then do the registration between GoToWebinar and Infusionsoft. So we'd have a couple of steps each time to actually kick off a webinar. And I just thought, no, there's no way, this is just too much work. So that was kind of the before. We didn't do it. So after we'd set this up, we did the initial setup, and we implemented this about 2 years ago, and we used Dynamic Sync and GoToWebinar. And this campaign is on basically a loop, and it's possible because of a particular feature in Dynamic Sync. But what happens is we automatically register people into the webinar. So they get this email, as you can see here, and they basically, if they can't make it, they opt out and they click that link down the bottom and they don't get any more reminders. But what we wanted to have happen is we want to actually re-register them back into the next webinar when kind of this webinar finishes off. So our template that we've created over the last few years and adjusted as we kind of have been using it and improving it is really, really great, because after that webinar is finished, then we automatically re-register everybody back into the next webinar and the process starts again. So it's awesome, saved a whole bunch of time. And what Dynamic Sync allows us to do is, instead of going to GoToWebinar, creating the webinar there, then going to like Dynamic Sync and creating the webinar there, and then doing anything in the campaign, we are going into Dynamic Sync. We are creating the webinar from Dynamic Sync. It's talking to GoToWebinar. It's creating the webinar there, and then it's obviously talking to Infusionsoft. So all I need to do, very similar to the live event setup, is I need to just go to Dynamic Sync and go, well, when am I running this webinar? Put in the date, put in the time, yada, 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 we're all good to go. So every 6 months, this is a monthly webinar we do, I load up the next 6 months worth of dates. It might take me 10 minutes, and then it's done. That's it, literally. I don't have to do anything else for the next 6 months. So it's really, as I said, I was looking for a really efficient way of doing it, and I haven't found any other way that's been as great as this one. So one of the cool features that allows this to be possible with Dynamic Sync is they've got a HTTP post that automatically registers someone to the next event. So you can see there the campaign, the post. It's then looking in Dynamic Sync, which is that third kind of box there. Our Leverage Lab webinar, okay, what's the next available date? You can see that Thursday, the 18th of March, and then it's pulling the details from that event date ID. So that's probably a little bit techie. There's videos on how to do it, but definitely if you're running reoccurring weekly stuff to your clients, bi-weekly, fortnightly, monthly, quarterly, and you kind of know in advance when those dates are going to be set, I highly recommend you check out that feature. It's awesome. Okay, so that's the recurring webinars. I wanted to then move into event stats and what do you track? I know that there's a whole bunch of things that we can monitor, and having a background in reporting and analytics, sometimes you can monitor too much and sometimes you can monitor not enough. But some of the things that we look at, excuse me, is a whole bunch of different things, but I wanted to really focus on 3 of them today. So registered, attended, and signed up or purchased. Where this is really helpful for us is, particularly for those clients or free webinars that you might be doing, is how successful were they? And of course the dollar side of things and looking at that is important too, and there's ways you can track that. But I want to share how we're specifically tracking these 3 key metrics here: the registered, attended, and signed up, purchased. So we're actually using Graphly for that. So we've set up this, I think it's a conversion funnel. Sorry, Jared, if I've called it the wrong thing. But what we're doing then is we're actually looking at those tags that got automatically created earlier with the Dynamic Sync setup. And then we're setting up these Graphly widget to then look at, well, how many people did we have register for that particular event? So we're talking about the 19th of November last year. How many people registered? How many people attended? And we can see obviously the conversion between the registered and the attended stages. And then how many actually purchased on the back of that. Now this is incredibly powerful because the client that we've been working with who's sort of been testing, do they go with a free preview event? Do they go with a low-cost event? They've been testing how effective they are. And with a free event, we're seeing, excuse me, a whole bunch of extra registrations, heaps, ridiculous. But the attendance is worse, and actually, in their case, this last round that they did, the purchases was lower. So it was great that they grew their database. That's probably more of the activity that they did, but the event was actually not as successful as having it a low-cost paid event. Now, that might not be the case for you or for your clients. You've got to kind of test and measure what sort of works for you and your market, what they respond to. But this allows us to easily see between a bunch of different events. As you can imagine, you could have this set up for the 7 locations that you might be doing and see, well, how have they all compared between each other. And just on that, I mean, if you change a whole bunch of things at each event, then it can be hard to attribute that that's actually causing that particular result. So it's something to be mindful of. So if you've got a different offer this time versus last time, paid versus not paid to actually go to the event, someone else is presenting. So there's other components, right, that you need to consider. But if you're running really a consistent event all the time, then it's definitely worthwhile keeping track of. Well, I feel like I'm really talking fast.
This is awesome stuff. I'm sure everyone agrees. This, wow. I feel like, chat in, you guys. If you have any questions, definitely chat in. Mandy's covering a lot of stuff here, but this is incredible. I mean, I think you're making events and webinars more doable for a lot of people here. So we've got a question here. Does Dynamic Sync work only with GoToWebinar? And can you advertise your events on Eventbrite too? And how would that fit into Dynamic Sync? Do you know?
Great questions. And I appreciate you jumping in, so I can have a drink of water on that. Thank you. So Dynamic Sync also integrates with GoToMeeting, and they've just launched Zoom. And I know Zoom is quite popular in this group as well, so check that out. Martin's going to jump on in a minute and can answer some more questions. So Martin, I might get you to answer the Eventbrite one in a minute. In my experience, no, because Dynamic Sync is really designed to work on its own, so and use your website. And I've actually had a few clients who have used Eventbrite, and it can be good because you're going to go out and get some more leads that you may not have had exposure to. But my understanding is, well, you're directing people to an Eventbrite page. So in terms of like retargeting people that might be checking out an event that don't purchase, I don't know if you've got much control of that if you're sending people to Eventbrite. And then the follow-up and getting them into your database. And I believe there's some integrations back to Infusionsoft. But yeah, you'd have to, I don't think that there's something directly, but Martin can confirm in a minute anyway.
Awesome.
Okay.
Cool, yeah. We got more questions here. This is great. Would you repeat your tagging strategy, specifically tag names? So we will be posting the recording of this. I don't know that you had like a really like complex tagging strategy.
Yeah.
Maybe real quick, just kind of what were you doing on that one?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's really up to you. We try and keep the name of the event at the front, and I probably didn't do it there, depending on what we've kind of set up for the client. The name of the event at the front, it could be the locations. It depends on what's more important. Is it more important to look at the registrations, or is it more important to kind of attribute and easily identify all the people that were part of like the Brisbane March event, for example? So if it's better and makes more sense, put the location or the whatever's going to sort of distinguish that event, and then you've got dash registered, then dash attended, then dash no show. So it's kind of easier to see. To be honest, I probably didn't do that in that slide, but that's probably how I would do it.
Cool.
Hopefully that helps.
Cool. And Sarah's asking if you'd be open to sharing a layout of the campaign, and we actually kind of talked about this yesterday. I think, at the end of this webinar, Mandy's going to, she would like to engage with you if you've got specific questions or would like some help with your events or webinars. So she's gonna offer an opportunity for you to connect with her directly to do that kind of stuff. So I think that might be a good time to kind of see more behind the curtain. She's spent a lot of hours and a lot of hours putting this stuff together, and so want to make sure that we're not just throwing stuff out there, because when you look at it in a the grand sort of perspective, there's a lot to it. there's a lot to all this stuff. So and automated webinars.
Yes.
What insights do you have? That's a very vague question, Srini. Any insights on automated webinars?
Not really. We've got one client that has done some in the past, and they kind of stopped. So I feel like I'm not really in a place to comment on it. I know there's a bunch of different tools out there. I personally like the live side of things. I think if you're just starting out with events, I think you've got to prove the concept, get the conversions right before you go and automate anything. And then there's a whole bunch of tools out there. So I'm probably not in a place that we're ready to do that. We need to run the same webinar consistently, get some really good results, and then automate that. But there's a whole bunch of platforms. Sorry that I don't really have exposure to those. Most of our clients just do live stuff, and they're getting some really good engagement. And I think there's a whole bunch of automated tools out there that people pretend that they're live, and it's just like, come on, we're 2017, like we know what you're up to. So I mean, there's clients out there that are getting there's people out there getting really great results, but I can't speak specifically. Sorry.
Cool. I think that's great advice. Is prove your concept, prove the content and the conversion on it, and if it's a good fit for the audience, if people are going to consume that and you can get conversions off of the automated version as well. There you go.
Yeah.
Like Mandy said, a lot of tools out there and many different kind of camps as far as whether automated webinars are good or not.
Yeah.
And we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Okay, cool. Am I good to? I'll keep rolling here, but if you've got more questions, we'll try our best to make some time at the end. So as mentioned, I just wanted to share a couple of things about Dynamic Sync, because a lot of the cool tools that we've shared are because of Dynamic Sync. So really, Dynamic Sync I don't think is the best fit for everybody. It's really not. It's really a good fit for yourself or a client that might actually have an event strategy. So events are core to sort of how you're getting out there, whether it's from a promotional point of view or whether it's fulfillment. So if you're running and clear and run regular live and online events, I think it's definitely worthwhile looking at. And really, there is an average of sort of 50 to 100 online, offline attendees per month to really get the value out of it. Now, do you need to be doing that? Absolutely not. I'm probably averaging about 20, and we've got a couple of clients who we've set up that are averaging about 20 because they run a reoccurring kind of breakfast thing that they do. So we have a live kind of reoccurring event campaign as well. But just kind of flag that's sort of where you're looking at. If you've only got a sort of handful, it may be worth looking at some other solutions. And really, the reason for this is it is a little bit complicated. I'll be honest, it's something we've worked with this tool for 3 years, and it's taken us a little bit to get our heads around it and to know the quirks of it. Like any system, you kind of know your workarounds, what's some awesome features of it. So it's either you need someone savvy internally for that client or for yourself to really own it and run with it, or there needs to be a budget to really engage a consultant to get it set up in the first place. And then, as you can see from the examples that I've shared, once it's set up, it's super, super easy. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not, as I said, it's not for everybody. And I might just hand over as well to Martin Venkoff from Dynamic Sync. I reached out to him because obviously I chatted to Matt about running this webinar about events, and it seemed inappropriate to spend all this time about some of the cool things that we're doing and not reach out to Martin just to say a couple of things. So Martin, I might hand it over to you. Do we need to do something? You're all over it, Matt? Oh.
Yep.
My slides disappeared though.
I screwed it up.
Hey, hello everyone. Hope you're all doing well. I hope you can hear me.
Hello, Martin. Welcome.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thanks very much. And Mandy, thank you for the great introduction. And we're really glad to hear that Dynamic Sync has made a positive impact on your own business as well. So yeah, my name is Martin Venkov, and I'm an Infusionsoft certified partner, as well as one of the directors of Parallel Global, which is the company who owns and operates Dynamic Sync. My business partner, Anton Mengfeld, initially created Dynamic Sync back in 2013 with the intention to assist Infusionsoft users in automating their live and online events. Dynamic Sync does this by integrating with their Infusionsoft app as well as their website, which makes it possible to manage all events and attendees via the central location. So in the next slide, I'd like to go through some of our main features. Firstly, being able to easily showcase your upcoming events on your website is, I'm sure you agree with me, a critical part of running successful events. And thus we developed a simple WordPress plugin which allows you to display upcoming event information on your site and accept registrations. Once registered, Dynamic Sync will automatically apply the registered, attended, or absent tags and point the contacts to the relevant follow-up sequence. Earlier on, Mandy, you touched on the integration with GoToWebinar, and I'd like to also mention that we do integrate with GoToMeeting, and recently we've added Zoom to that list of integrations. We've included a screenshot on the right. It basically shows you your app dashboard and where you simply connect Dynamic Sync to the applicable webinar services. Another feature worth mentioning is we have an in-house ticket scanning app which works on Android as well as iOS devices. And this substantially improves the check-in process, especially at larger live events, by scanning tickets at the doors and automatically applying the attended tags. Dynamic Sync also comes with pre-built Infusionsoft campaigns, which can work out of the box, but we always encourage our clients to customize these and add their own flavor to them. So there are a number of additional features that Dynamic Sync offers. Mandy has touched on quite a few of them. I'm not going to go into the details today. You've already seen that we offer free accounts for ICPs, so you're all welcome to sign up and give Dynamic Sync a try. I think with that, I'd like to thank all of you for attending, and I'm going to hand over to Mandy.
Thanks, Martin. I appreciate you joining, particularly when it's a strange time in South Africa right now. That's really great. Thank you. So a couple of points in closing, and look, if you're not doing events, I really encourage you to seriously consider it. I was freaking out a couple of years ago before we started our first webinar. I was like, I don't know enough. No one's going to listen. No one's going to come. Like all of these stories in my head, and sometimes you kind of just need to go, okay, I got it, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And, you know, after that first webinar, I had hardly anyone on it. I didn't share that specific webinar result, but we had maybe 9 people in my first webinar, and 3 people signed up to a program I hadn't even created yet. So really, really awesome stuff. But you've just kind of got to get yourself out of the way and put it out there and go for it. But really, it opens up a lot of doors. Not only does it allow you to get some more prospects and some more clients, but for us, like, I'm asking to speak at events now, which I don't think if I'd put myself out there, I probably would have been given that opportunity, which is really, really great. And if you are looking at running your first event, really do check out the resources around that lean process and how can you get something out there really, really quickly, but create it when it's actually needed, so you're actually going to bring some money in before you go and build everything out. The kind of final thought that I want to sort of leave you with here is I encourage you just to take a moment to really think about the game that you're up for and the impact that you want to make in the world and the amount of people that you can touch and contribute to and help by running webinars or having a live event. And I really encourage and invite you to really consider that how big of a reach that you can make in the world. And I think it's incredible, and I know a lot of you are up to a lot of stuff. So I really invite you to have a look at running events if you're not doing it as well.